Every song that we sing is a sermon in itself. Both songs that we sang are teaching us lessons that are important, lessons that help us by reminding us of what is the most important thing in our lives. This afternoon, what I would like to do is go back to the Old Testament. And I want to speak just briefly here in my introduction about two things that I want to emphasize. The Bible speaks of David, King David. And I know that not only do we adults know the story of David and what the scriptures have to say about his work and how involved he is or was in the lineage of the Christ. But I am always very impressed by the fact that Paul mentions how God felt about David. He stated in Acts chapter 13, verse 22, that David is a man after my own heart. Let me tell you how important that statement is. It's very important because God made that statement. And not only that, but it is a true statement. It is a statement that only God can make, because God has the ability of knowing our hearts. We don't have that ability. We don't have that power to see the heart of people. We can see their deeds. We can see their lives. And we can be witnesses of things that people do, like you and me. But it is exceptional. It is outstanding when God speaks and he says, I know his heart. And he knew the heart of David. We all know David. We know why he became king. We know what happened in his life, things that were positive and things that were negative. And the Bible has a lot to say about David. David not only was a king, but he was an author. He wrote many psalms. We read them. John just read one of them. And we can study and we can benefit greatly. We can be encouraged by these words of wisdom that are spoken about a man named David and his experiences. But let me take you to Psalm 25. Because David speaks of himself in several psalms. And here he says, to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. O my God, I trust in you. Let me not be ashamed. Let not my enemies triumph over me. Indeed, let no one who waits on you be ashamed. Let those be ashamed who deal treacherously without cause. Show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. On you I wait all the day. Remember, O Lord, your tender mercies and your loving kindnesses, and they are from of old. Do not remember the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to your mercy, remember me, for your goodness' sake, O Lord. Look at verse 16. Turn yourself to me and have mercy on me, for I am desolate and afflicted. The troubles of my heart have enlarged. Bring me out of my distresses. Look on my affliction and my pain, and forgive all my sins. Consider my enemies, for they are many, and they hate me with cruel hatred. Keep my soul and deliver me. Let me not be ashamed, for I put my trust in you. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait for you. Redeem Israel, O God, out of all their troubles. So here you have David opening his heart to God. And he does this in writing. He does this in psalm. He is speaking with God through these psalms and asking God's help. But not only that, but he is acknowledging his shortcomings. And you know that the Bible speaks about his shortcomings. You know of the things that he accomplished. We all know these facts because the Bible states all of this about David. But listen what I want to do tonight. I want us to go to the following psalm. This is an extraordinary psalm written by David. I don't see it only as a psalm, I see it as a prayer. A man that is opening up his heart to God. And this gives me plenty of reason to understand when God says that he knew his heart and he knew what kind of man he was. Because here you see a man that is opening his heart so that God can see who he is. And we're going to follow Psalm 26. And I've given this lesson the title of Vindicate Me, O Lord. And I do that because that's exactly what you find in Psalm 26, beginning with verse 1. And listen just carefully as to what David is saying. Vindicate me, O Lord, for I have walked in my integrity. I have also trusted in the Lord. I shall not slip. That word, vindicate, do me justice. Recognize me. Recognize me. Look at me. Investigate me. Prove me, O Lord. What a statement. He is inviting God's view of himself. He is asking God to prove him, to examine him. Is he real? Is he really who he is? No one can fool God, as I've already stated several times here tonight. Because God has the ability to see the thoughts of men. God is able to see things that we're thinking about. And he makes a judgment on what we think. He did that with David several times. And that's one big reason why David opens up. And he is telling God, examine me. And examine me because I walk in integrity. What a statement. Can I say something here to kind of pump us up a little bit tonight? How many people do you know that would want to say that. Can I ask you, would you be willing to tell God right now or at night before you go to sleep, God, vindicate me, examine me, look at me, look at my heart, look at what I've done? That is a super statement on the part of David. And the reason why he feels so confident is because he admits, I have walked in my integrity. I am sincere. I'm honest. I'm real. And I have also trusted in the Lord. And I have not wavered. Now you may be thinking right now, well, wait a minute. Doesn't he admit that he did wrong? Didn't he confess his sins? Have you not read Psalm 51? Where he pleads to God and tells him, I am repentant, forgive me? Yes. But here is a man that recognized that God was willing to forgive him and to help him along in his own life. Here we have a picture of a man that was sincere. But look at verse 2. Again, different words, but synonyms. Examine me, O Lord, and prove me. Try my mind and my heart. Think about that for a minute again. See the man's sincerity. See the man's honesty. See how this man is opening up to God and actually challenging God to come and look in his heart. This is very, very important for us to recognize, because here we are seeing the reasons behind God making that statement, a man after my own heart, because he was willing to be examined and he wanted to stand before God approved. But look at verse 3. He starts to give some reasons as to why he feels the way he does. First of all, he acknowledges God's loving kindness is before my eyes. First thing that he wants to say here, as far as he is concerned, is, I recognize your love. David is telling God, I know that you're the God of love. And what a statement it is. This morning we talked about Deuteronomy chapter 6. And you notice how Moses was pointing out to the fathers the need to love God with all their heart. Well, David here is admitting, acknowledging, and confessing that God's love is before his own eyes. And why does he feel so confident? Because he says, I have walked in your truth. Look at something else in verse 4. I have not sat with idolatrous mortals, nor will I go in with hypocrites. Look at how he is separating himself. He is telling God, look at my life and how I don't walk with them. I don't associate with people like this. I stay away from people like these. I don't want to have anything to do with them. That's why he says, I am who I am. Look at verse 5. I have hated the assembly of evildoers and will not sit with the wicked. This kind of leaves the impression in my mind that David is talking about the assembly. Even in the assembly of worshiping God, even in that moment of coming together to worship God, David wanted God to know that he does not associate with those that are not real, for those that are not faithful, for those that are not following God's ways. God knew that. But David is arguing in favor of his integrity. Just as God knew David's heart, he also knew what kind of life he was living. And it was a true statement that he had walked in truth and that he was living a life separate and apart from those that were hypocrites, those that were not real, those who pretended to be followers of God. But let me show you something else. That psalm continues in verse 6. Remember, here is a man that is open to God. I will wash my hands in innocence, so I will go about your altar, O Lord. Again, this is the time of worship, and how he presents himself in the presence of God, how he wants God to see him as a man that is innocent of sin. And this is how he behaves in the assembly. This is how he worships God, because he comes before God with an open and sincere heart, a heart that is devoted to God, a heart that is clean, that is not messed up with bad attitudes. David is giving God the reasons why he wants God to vindicate him. Look at verse 7. That I may proclaim with the voice of thanksgiving and tell of all your wondrous works. He wanted to be a participant. David said, this is what I want to do. I want to participate. I want to be a part of the assembly and give thanks to you and speak of everything good that you have done. Now you may think, well, he's defended himself. He may be defending himself, but he is explaining to God how he feels and how he works and how he worships. These are words that help us understand. Look at something else that he says here in verse 8. Lord, I have loved the habitation of your house. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that means? It means that when he would come to worship God, he saw that as a tremendous blessing. He didn't murmur. He didn't complain about the assembly. He recognized that there were some people in the assembly that were hypocrites. He knew that there were people that were not in the condition or in the position to worship God. But he says, I don't have anything to do with them. I live separate and apart from them. But I love when I come into your house, the place of where your glory dwells, in the house of God. In verse 9, David is petitioning God. And he makes some very simple statements here in verse 9. Do not gather my soul with sinners, nor my life with bloodthirsty men. Don't put me in the company, in other words, don't place me, he's asking God, don't place me in the company of sinners. I'm innocent, he says. I've been forgiven. I don't want you to count me among the sinners. I don't want you to count me among the bloodthirsty men, murderers. That's what he's saying. And he's explaining these facts to God. Look at verse 10. In whose hands is a sinister scheme, and whose right hand is full of bribes. Who were these men? Businessmen at that time? What kind of life were they living? A corrupt life in business deals, as we call them today, in agreements where they were stealing money taking advantage of people. David here is saying, don't count me among those. I don't want to have anything to do with those. Especially there where he says, in whose hands is a sinister scheme. Brethren, here you have a man that recognizes the importance of living a godly life. And he concludes in verse 11 and 12, look at it. But as for me, he goes back again and talks about himself. I will walk in my integrity. Well, he started in verse 1 pointing to his integrity. And so he is finishing this psalm with speaking of integrity. And then he says, redeem me and be merciful to me. Now, this is very important. Let me tell you why. Because anyone reading from verse 1 all the way down to verse 10, you would conclude that this man was bragging about himself. That here you have an egotistic person. David was not that. When David was arguing in favor of his life before God, and God knew his heart and God knew his life, he is totally correct. Like he said in Psalm 25, I have sinned. And he asked God, you know what? Forgive me. Show me your mercy by forgiving me. I ask you, O God, to forgive me. He concludes the psalm. And in verse 12, he says about himself again, my foot stands in an even place. In the congregations I will bless the Lord. Again, here he finishes this psalm by speaking about how faithful he is and how he will continue to praise God and to bless God every time he worships God. Now let me ask you again, how many of us can do what David did? Can I do that? Can I speak boldly? I should. Should you? You should also. All of us that are Christians should be able to sing this psalm. We should be able to pray this prayer just like David prayed it, just like he sang it, just like he wrote it, just like he lived it. Because this is a beautiful example of someone who recognized that he was faithfully serving God. Brethren, may these words that we have studied tonight serve as an encouragement to us so that we too can live right in the sight of God, and God can look into our hearts and see our attitudes, see our thinking, and approve of it. And let us all, in our own personal way, pray to God, vindicate me, prove me, save me, forgive me, because you are God. An invitation song has been prepared for tonight again. We'll just sing this song, but at the same time we invite anyone who is able and willing to respond to the Lord's invitation. Shall we stand and sing?